Hi all, this is Emily. This video is going to be for your tutorial practice, and we are going to have several things going on in this video. Some basics in terms of getting a start to a layout here. Before you start the practice, go ahead and download the image that I gave you to use in the layout for this practice. It'll be the Lyceum for practice here. So you can see I've got it on my monitor here. I'm going to open InDesign, and basically we're going to do several things here. We're going to create a print document, and as we work through this, we're going to learn a little bit more about the navigation. We're going to create an object with color, which is technically going to be our background color. We'll place an image, and in the process of working with these different elements, we'll create layers to show you how you can operate without affecting other things on the page. And we're going to place some copy, and within that copy I'm going to show you some things in your paragraph window and your menu that you can do for some of the types. So indentions, we're going to get rid of any random automatic hyphenation. We're going to adjust the size and the line spacing or the leading. We're going to save those settings in a paragraph style, and also create drop cap for the very beginning of our column of type. And then we're going to also use the other type tool in the little type toolbox that is a type on a path tool, which is pretty cool to understand how to use. So after all of that is done, I'm going to show you how to package, which is an InDesign command, which will save all of your work in a folder and all your components in your layout. That'll be crucial to your process, because that is how you will have to, you'll have to end your work that way in order to upload it properly for grading purposes. So when you open InDesign here, if it's your first time user, you're probably going to have a different screen than this. It'll probably be a welcome screen here. Once you have some files, it'll show your more recent files that you've used, but you can still create a new or open a previous file from that screen, or you can go to the top menu up here and select File, New, and Document. So when we get this screen here, we're going to select Print. It's going to give us some presets here. If you click that, it'll show you all the different standard presets and sizes for print. For this practice, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to do a letter size, and we're going to keep it in picas because we want to work in picas and points most of the time. But it is set to the same thing as inches. If we switch this to inches, you'll see that it's 8.5 by 11. We're going to keep it one page. A lot of these settings are in the initial setup. If you forget something in this setup, you can always go back to File, Document Setup down here after you've started a document and get back to some of these settings. We're going to leave the margins here and not touch them. There's a 1/2 inch margins default, and we're going to do a bleed margin just because I want to bleed the background color. So 1 pica, 6 points. So the P is for pica. The number after that is the smaller units of a pica, which is points, and that's 1/4 inch. And a bleed margin is usually standard an 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. The slug margin we don't need. We're not giving special instructions or anything to the printer. So you can see our document here. If you click preview, it'll show you what it looks like before you actually click create. So here is what we have. Your windows over here, we're going to need our layer window, and we're going to need our paragraph window, and we're going to need our paragraph styles window. And all of those, if you don't see some of those open or viewable in your windows to the side of your interface, then you can go up to window and make some of those visible. So layers is there. Anything dealing with type is going to be under type and tables, so your paragraph window is under that. And then your styles, your paragraph styles will be under styles there. So we'll be using those three mainly. Your layer window, the first thing we're going to do is put in your background color. So each layer has its own color coding, so the bounding boxes will be a specific color. This first layer will be blue, and I can double click on the layer and name that layer. I'm just going to name it background. So what I'm going to do here is go over to my toolbox and I'm going to select the object tool, which is set to the rectangle tool at the moment. But if I see the little arrow here, that means you've got more tools in that toolbox. So if I click and hold that down, I can see what those are. I'm going to select the rectangle tool and I'm going to bleed the color off the page. So this line here is the edge of our paper of what it would be trimmed to, which is 8.5 by 11. I'm going to bleed that color off the page. And inside this is our text margin line. We want all of our type to stay within that margin. And so while this is selected, we have our panel at the top that's giving us a lot of our menu options here for objects. And here's our transformation tools, our sizing tools, how we're angling things. We also have a fill and also a stroke. Anytime we use the term stroke, that means outline, which in this case we don't need an outline to this box, so we're going to leave that at none. If I click the arrow, that's going to bring up my swatch menu list or list of different swatch colors that are already default and in place. If I want to select a specific color, I can double click on the box itself and pick up my color picker is right there. So I can create some different variations of color just by moving this around and working with this. I don't want a color to be too dark in that background. So what I can do is, so if it is too dark, I can select and make it lighter once I create a swatch from it. So let's say I made this blue color. I can add that to my swatch and it'll automatically turn my box that color. And I can click OK. And if I click this arrow, you can see that it added the swatch there. And at the top here, I've got two settings here, or I've got a setting for tint. And also in my panel, I've got a transparency setting. Anytime you see the white and negative space, the checkerboard there, that means transparency. So I can either adjust the opacity of this color where we can still see through it, or I can adjust the tint, which is going to just be like adding white to that color. So I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to make it a really light bluish gray here. And that'll work. My type will show up against that color and it's not too dark. Alright, so that's our background color. And I can go over here to my layer and lock that layer in this little negative space here. And I can go down to the bottom and create a new layer with my little icon here, or I can go to the hamburger stack and create new layer. And this new layer is going to be my image that I place. So to place an image in our toolbox over here, we are going to use a different tool. You've got two shape tools here that look a little different. The bottom one is what we just used to create an object with color. Above that is the frame tool. That's for when we want to place images. And you'll see the difference with the X going through it. And if I hold that down, I've got the same shapes for frames that we can do as well. So I am going to just click rectangle for this purpose. And I'm going to create a frame here. Now sometimes your frame dimensions are going to be slightly different than the actual image size and dimensions. So I'll show you how you can adjust that and how you can make that work. So while we have it selected, we're going to place this image. We can either go to File, Place, or click Command or Control D for a shortcut. And I'm going to select the image. So you can see when it places the image, my dimensions are a little different. It's not showing the whole image inside the frame. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool. And I've got the frame selected here, but I can also double click inside the frame, and you can see the bounding box here is the image inside the frame. So if I want to scale that down proportionately to fit into the frame, I can do that. Or say you are wanting to crop an image or show only part of that, you can just put what you want in that image and slide it around to fit what you want inside the frame. So there's a purpose to having it operate separately like that. To To scale proportionately, we want to use some shortcut keys. If we were just to click and drag on any of these anchors or handlebars, you can see that it distorts and skews the image, which we don't want to do. That's a negative thing. So if you accidentally do that, just click Command Z and undo. And when you click and drag the handlebars or the anchor points, then you need to use the Command Shift keys or Control Shift on a PC. And that will allow you to scale everything down proportionately. And like I said, my image is slightly different dimensions than my frame, so that's fine. I can click off the image inside the frame and then click on the frame itself and just pull the frame to fit. And I can still work with this image a little more. Like I can, if I want it to be just a little bigger here, I can select an anchor point again. This is just the frame. It will adjust the image inside the frame as well if I'm scaling all of it. So if I click Command Shift and I click and drag, it's going to scale it for me. So if I need to move it around or scale it a little bigger, I can do that. Do that pretty easily. Okay, so that's our image inside the frame. And if you look in your links window up here, you can see where we've placed that image. So I'm going to lock this layer. I'm going to start a new layer. This is going to be our type. And we're going to place some copy here. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing. We're going to work in our paragraph window and our paragraph styles window. I'm going to go to my type tool over here in the toolbox. And again, I've got two types of tools there. I've got the regular type tool and the type on the path, which we'll use in a moment. So I'm going to select just the regular type tool here. And you'll see my cursor change. I'm going to click and drag a column. And when I let go, you can see the cursor is ready to type, or if you're filling type with, or copy and pasting type in, that's fine. For this practice, I'm going to fill with placeholder text. So I'm going to go up to type, fill with placeholder text. And if it shows up red like that, that means it's not recognizing your font. So I'm just going to select all this type. It's just going to be Latin gibberish as a placeholder text. But I am going to Command A to select it all, or Control A. And I'm going to go up here. You've got all your type tools up here since we're working with type. And I'm going to change the name of my typeface. I might use something like, I'll just use Avenir here. And I am going to adjust some other settings here. You can see when I adjusted the type, this typeface is a little bigger than the typeface that was there previously. So you can see this little plus sign happened when it adjusted. That means that some of that type bumped out of the text box or out of view of the text box. In other words, there's more type that's not being visible here. So we're going to change that in just a moment because we're going to change the size of this. But it will create an error when you do that, so be mindful of that when you see the little plus sign there. But I'm going to select this type again. We're going to do a couple of things with this type. First, we're going to adjust the size. So I'm going to just reduce the size to 11 points. Make it a little smaller. And I'm going to adjust the line spacing, which is right underneath the size. I'm going to adjust that to 14 points, just to give a little bit more space between each line and make it a little easier to read. Now you can see, if I zoom in, you can see all these automatic hyphenations. So when a word runs out of room, it automatically hyphenates. And we can find that setting in our paragraph window. So what we would do here is find that little bottom corner where it says hyphenate, and it will generally automatically be checked there to automatically hyphenate these words, but it doesn't look very good in columns of type to have that happen. So we can deselect that, and it will help everything kind of fit better. But again, we're getting this overset type error, so we want to adjust that. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool, and I'm just going to make my box just a little bigger here to fit it all. And I might move my image up just a hair so we can fit this in here. And I'm going to go down to 10 points on this so that we can fit it a lot more easily. And with this, just to show you, you can even go to, you know, half of points. So I could even do 10.5 points and adjust it to be a little bigger, in between 10 and 11 points. And I adjusted the leading or the line spacing to be just a couple of points more than what I had the size. So you can see I've turned off the hyphenation here. And I'm also going to look at my paragraph window on the left column. The second one down is indentions. If you hover your mouse over some of these icons, it'll tell you what they are. So this is first line, left indent. So it's going to find those natural breaks in the copy where a new paragraph is starting, and it will naturally find those and indent them. So you can see if I go up on the arrow here, it's indenting there. So the rule of thumb with your indentions in points is to not go over the amount of what your size is. So if my size is 10.5 points here, then I won't go over 10.5 points in my indentions here. So I'm just going to keep it at 10. It's going to indent each of my paragraphs here that are created. And once you have these settings, we've adjusted the size, we've adjusted the leading, we've deselected to automatically hyphenate, and we've created our indentions here. So I want to save this style, or all of our settings here. So while I have it all selected, I'm going to go into my paragraph styles, and I'm going to click to create a new paragraph style. And that's going to come up with paragraph style 1, and I'm just going to say copy. So what that's going to do is if I have multiple pages to a document, or in a second when I create a new text box, I can just select that type, go to my paragraph styles, and just click what that style is, and it will automatically adjust to those settings that I did in the first round here. And this saves a lot of time when you're placing a lot of copy in a document. So now we see our text box here, and we've got our indentions, and we've saved that. So what I can do here is now I want to create another text box beside it. And your pop-up guides will tell you when you've got the exact width and the exact height of your previous one. Again, I'm going to go up to type, fill with placeholder text. I'm going to Command A to select it all. And I'm just going to go to my paragraph style and click copy. And that paragraph style is going to change all of my settings to meet up with what I did in this first one. So it automatically created, it didn't pick up another paragraph here. If we put one of these, if we broke this up, it would automatically start it with that indentation if we wanted to break that up, which is fine. And I'm going to go back to my selection tool because I want to create a drop cap in this first paragraph here. And with the drop cap, you don't really have to indent, so I'm going to take the indentation away on this first one. And I want to make this O bigger than everything else. So I'm going to select the O. And in this left column, again in my paragraph window, I'm going to go down to the bottom left. And since it's just one character, it's going to automatically show that it's one character here. If we were dropping all 4 of these characters, we would increase this by 4, the number of characters that we are dropping. And you would then, which I'm just going to do the O. So we'll select the O. And then this left side allows you to determine how many lines of copy that it is dropping. So if we do it 2 or 3 here, here's 3, and what that looks like. So now that's kind of made both of these columns a little bit level and more uniform with one another. So that's how you create a drop cap there. And it will automatically jump and put your other type along the edge of that. You can always put your cursor there and adjust the kerning if it's too close or too far apart, or running into the drop cap letter, which it sometimes does. You can adjust that. So now I'm going to go back to my selection tool. So now we have our copy placed. We've created a drop cap, we've adjusted the size and leading, we've taken away the hyphenation, and we've created a paragraph style to make it less time consuming and easier as we do multiple boxes. Okay, so now I'm going to lock that in place. The new layer here, we're going to do type on a path. I'm just going to put this as path. So to type on a path, that's just basically going to let you type along a irregular or a certain, say you want to create an arch here of type. You would use the type on a path tool. So it can be very convenient and an innovative way to do posters and wrap around certain objects and things like that. So we're going to switch to our type on a path tool. Before we can use our type on a path though, we've got to create the path. So I'm going to go down here and we're just going to make a type arch above this. So I'm just going to write Hotty Toddy up here. So I'm going to use my elliptical tool because that will help us create an arch. So I'm just going to select and drag to create an arch here. And I don't have a stroke assigned to this. We can see the line here, but it'll disappear because it's not a line assigned to it. But just for the purpose of being able to see it while we type there, I'm just going to add a stroke weight to it just for a second. And I'm going to center this along with the image so I can see the arch going above it. And I can make that more acute if I want. I can pull this up. I can pull these edges in. I can create whatever arch that I want there. And I'm going to have to deselect it right now, which is why we added the line so we can see that path. So I'm going to go back, now that we've created the path, I'm going to go back to the type on a path tool, and I'm going to just click on, you can see when I hover over that line, my cursor has a plus sign. That means it's ready to add type on that path. So I'm going to click onto it and you'll see my cursor there. And I'm going to use all caps here. So I'm going to, and it's way over here on the right. We're going to adjust the size here. I'm going to select all or Command A or Control A. I'm going to change this. I'm going to go back to the Avenir. I'm going to make it bigger. Say 28 points here, that works fine. And as you can see, it's way over here, still not centered. But instead of using your space bar key to jump it over and click to make it go over, you'll see that you've got some bars here along this path now. When I use my selection tool and select it again, I've got this little bar that goes to the right, and I've got this little bar that goes to the left. So that's basically the beginning of your path and the end of your path. So you can slide those things to make it more centered. So this would actually be something like that. Would probably look good. And now I can get rid of this line here. I can select that and do none for the stroke. So you can see, so if I go to print preview, so if I click off to the side and I click and I hit the W button, it'll show you the print preview of what it would look like trimmed and printed. So you can see my bleed margin disappears. You can see where the edge of the paper with the color is bleeding off the page. So you can see the arch of the type. So that's a type on a path tool that allows you. And if you don't want to use a regular shape, you can also create a path just using a manual line. If I wanted to type along a freehand line, I could do the same in that regard. So either way you want to do that. So there's our path and our type on a path. So now that we've got everything complete, what we want to do before you turn it in is you want to package this. So we want to have all of our components here recorded in a folder so that just in case anything, like if you were to send me just this INDD file, I would not be able to see your images. There would not be any links to that. So we're going to save this first. I'm going to do a save as. And all of your work that you do in class will mostly be your last name first and underscore and whatever the project title. So here it would be tutorial practice. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. So now we're saving the file. It will be an INDD file. That's an InDesign file. And I'm going to now package this. So I'm going to go to File, Package. And you're going to have a series of windows pop up. It's going to let you know that it's picking up links because we placed an image. Then the next window is, again, you don't have to fill all this out. We're not going to press with this. But you do want all your file names consistent. So I'm just going to go in here and type the same file name. And then this window is asking me where do you want the packaged folder to go. So we will add the word folder at the end, which is just fine. That doesn't matter. I'm going to put it to my desktop. And then I'm going to click package. It's going to give you a warning screen just so that it's warning you if you used a typeface that came from the internet or fonts that are copywritten or have a licensure to them, that you're not breaking that license. And so now if we minimize this, we can go back to my desktop here. You can see my packaged folder right here. Here's my file that I saved. If I want to put it in there, it's automatically got if I open this folder that's packaged, you can see it's got all the versions of my work. So it automatically puts a print PDF. It automatically gives me an INDD file, which is my working InDesign file. It's going to give me an IDML file, which is a compatible version to older versions of Adobe. So if someone were opening your file on an older, like CS4 or CS5, they would have to open the IDML file. And then it's got my document fonts that I use, the Avenir. And if I open my links, it's showing my image that I placed in my document. So this gives me all of the versions and all of the components that were in the file that I just created. So you want to package your work. Anytime we use InDesign, you want to use that command and package that. And it will require you to save your file first. And so I'm just going to replace my saved one so I have it all in my folder. And to upload to Box, you want to compress that. A lot of times, a lot of our work is going to be too big to upload to Box without compressing it first. So I'm going to right-click. And on a Mac, it's just going to give you this immediate window, and all I'm going to do is go down to compress. If you're on a PC, it'll probably say send to, and then you follow that down to compress zip file, because what we want is this zip file right here. So you can see here's my zip that it created. So you will click and drag that to the Box folder for your section number or the section that you're in for this designated assignment. So you can either upload it as a file, a zip file, or you can click and drag it into the designated folder in Box. Okay? So when all is said and done, make sure you package and compress your work before uploading to Box. Okay, so there's your first tutorial practice. I hope that's easy to follow. If you have questions, please let me know. And good luck. Thank you.